in today's video, I'm going to be talking about CPTSD, my personal experience with CPTSD, and the symptoms that I experience and did experience when I first got the diagnosis. So let's go ahead and get started.
I'm trying to remain so strong. I know it's good if I'm alone. I got it. I gotta go. Run.
So for those of you who have come across this video and don't know who I am, my name is Deanna and I am 29. I live within the UK and I got diagnosed with CPTSD in 2021. So this was kind of like mid-COVID, and I'm going to go ahead and get into, for those of you who are not aware of what CPTSD is, I'm going to go into what is CPTSD, how it differs from PTSD, and my experience, my symptoms when I first got the diagnosis versus my symptoms now, the treatments I've had. I'm going to go through the whole different, thing. And remember that obviously I'm not a diagnostic person, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse. I have some mental health training, but it's not a full qualification. So let's go ahead and get started and talk about what is CPTSD and the differences between that and what PTSD is. I'm going to start off with some definitions. I'm going to put them on screen as well for those of you who prefer to read it. But CPTSD is a form of PTSD. PTSD, just without the C, stands for post-traumatic stress disorder, and this is usually caused by a single traumatic event that doesn't always last the whole of your life. It can, like the trauma from it can, but usually it doesn't last the whole of your life. Whereas CPTSD stands for complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and this is usually defined by multiple or long-lasting traumas. And this can be, for example, this can be a childhood abuse or childhood traumas, or it can be multiple different traumas. I am now going to get into what I experienced that qualified for a diagnosis of CPTSD. I'm going to get briefly into the ages these happened and brief details about what these happened, but I will leave links to all the story times that I have available on my channel for the individual stories that I have for these, and I will leave them in the description box down below so you can go ahead and watch them after this video. But it's important that if you're watching this video, you obviously want to know the basics of CPTSD, and then if you want to know more about me and my story, then I will leave obviously those linked in the description box. So I'm going to go try and do this in age order. And if I'm looking down at any point, it's because I did write a few notes because I didn't want to forget anything, and I wanted to make sure that I was accurate with everything I was saying. The first trauma that I ever experienced was bullying, and I was severely bullied from the ages of about 5 all the way through to 17. So the whole of my schooling I was bullied. There was times where I would refuse to go into school. I would hide under the office desk at home. There was times where I would refuse to get out of bed. I would cry, I would scream, and this is me being an undiagnosed autistic, and I think that's important to mention here, is I am autistic. I was late diagnosed autistic, and I will also leave my series in the description box down below for that as well if you do want to look at my specific autism journey. So then between the ages of 11 and 15, the bullying became physical, especially with one particular bully, but there was also another person who slapped me across the face, and that was because I was standing up for some of my friends. And I don't know if I've made a story time about that, but the other ones I definitely have. So yeah, I might get into a bit more specifics with that one, actually, just because I haven't made a story time of that. And it's quite simple. So we're in a music lesson and this girl starts talking behind my back about my friends, saying that they are the R word and that they are stupid and that they are demented and things like that. So I basically stood up and I called her a SLUT. I'm not entirely sure whether I'm allowed to say that on YouTube, so I'm going to spell it out. I called her that, and basically then she turned around, she screamed, she stomped out the music room, and then she came back in and she slapped me across the face. So hard that it left a red handprint across my face. So obviously then I've grabbed my stuff, I've gone out, and I've had to write an incident report, and I think she was given isolation for 2 days, but there wasn't really much justice in that one. But as I said, that's literally the story of that one. But the rest of the stories will be linked in the description box down below. Then at the age of 14, so within this physical bullying era, the main bully who'd done the 2 assaults, she attempted to kill me, and she attempted to kill me by drowning. This was probably my first really, really traumatic experience that I went through. And it was very hard to go through that because, well, if someone tries to kill you and you had this near death experience, it is hard. It's not something you're going to get over like really easy or anything like that. Like, it is hard. And so I'll leave the full story time. But even thinking about it to this day, I'm like, I may have not been sitting here in front of you talking about this because of what happened. So yeah, that was the first traumatic event that happened that left me with a lot of PTSD symptoms. But when I was that age, I didn't really know what it was. And then we're going to move on to 18. So when I was 18, I was sexually assaulted, and I do have very like quite a few different story times on my channel. I have a three-part elaborated version of this story time, and I do have a basic quick overview of it also on my channel. So the basic overview one is a bit older, but the elaborated one is a bit longer, so it's three different parts. I will link to all of those different videos so you can go and watch them if you feel like you would like to. But that sexual assault was very complex, hence why I made like an elaborated version, and hence why I made like a more specifics and details about it, because the first video, everyone seemed to like it and found some support from it. So that's what I want to aim to do with this channel, is to provide people with a sense of I'm not alone. So then I want to go into the next, not really necessarily a trauma, but a period of time within my life. So I was very, very mentally unwell, in and out of psych wards from the ages of 17 through to 25. And touch wood, got a wood table in front of me, but touch wood, I have not been in a psych ward since the age of 25, since the year of 2020, which is actually quite surprising because the year of 2020, as we know it, was COVID, and a lot of people became more mentally unwell. But for some reason, my brain just became less mentally unwell. Like, not less, but it healed itself by that. And I don't know whether it was because I'd had quite a few different recovery opportunities and I'd had quite a few like treatments for my disorders, but yeah, it definitely was the year of change for me and the year of recovery for me. So, I've recently just celebrated 5 years of mental health recovery, and I'm really proud of that because I never thought, if you'd asked a 17-year-old girl, like, will you be 5 years recovered? I'd be like, no, I'm not even going to be here in 5 years. Like, I was dead set on not being here. And I was so mentally unwell that I was sectioned multiple times. If you don't know what sectioning is in the UK, I will probably do a video all about sectioning, but I need to get all the information for that. But you can quite easily do Google searches about what sectioning is in the UK. So then I want to move on to the next big trauma, which was losing two friends to suicide. And this happened at when I was 23 and when I was 27. So there was two friends I lost to suicide. The one that I lost in 2018, her name was Katie, and she was my first friend that I would call a best friend. And this was a virtual best friend. I never got to meet her. And I talked her down several times. I'm basically just going to talk about this very briefly because it is something that I kind of have dealt with. And I don't want to bring up too many emotions about it. In the future, if you guys are interested in hearing about my relationship with Katie and how she died, I potentially could make a video about it. But just, I need to be in a right headspace for that. And I feel that at the moment I'm in a good headspace. I don't want to ruin that, and I want to really push my YouTube out. So I want to be able to focus and not have too many like issues with mental health along with that, because that obviously then makes it harder for me. So I lost Katie to suicide when I was 23, and it was in 2018. So it was quite a few years ago, but to this day I still remember her, and I still have issues when I think about her. So, that was that one. And then in when I was 27, so only literally 2 and a bit years ago, I lost my friend Keris to suicide. Again, she was a virtual friend. I'd never met her. We did have plans to meet, and like it was no set date, but we did have plans to meet. I said like, "Oh, do you want me to come and see you? Do you want me to provide some sort of support that way?" Like, being an adult, I was able to just like buy a train ticket and go and see somebody. But unfortunately, she then passed away. She actually passed away, and then I got the news that she had passed away on the day that I travelled back from a holiday, and this holiday had already been quite difficult for me, for multiple reasons, which I'm not going to get into, but it'd already been quite difficult, and then I had to then deal with the grief and not have anyone to speak to until I got back to England, which was very difficult because, yeah, it was just difficult. I mean, imagine finding out that one of your friends has passed away to suicide, And for those of you who haven't lost anyone to suicide, suicide grief is a very different grief to normal grief. And I've experienced both, so I can talk about it from both sides. But yeah, I might talk about that in a video, the differences. But yeah, it's very different, for me at least. So I then want to briefly just bring into this as well the trauma that I have experienced from doctors, nurses, slash the NHS. So this is a very complex one, and there has been multiple times where I have been judged, I have been stigmatized by doctors and by just people in general in the NHS. And I might get into a story time. I haven't made a story time about this, but I might. But you can probably imagine being very mentally unwell from a young age, like being almost classed as a revolving door patient. If any of you have been classed as a revolving door patient, you probably can imagine the sorts of stigma that I would have got. So now I'm going to move on to the symptoms that I do or did experience. And for each one, I'm going to say do slash did. I'm going to kind of like go through like when I last experienced it and kind of what my experience of it was. So the first one I wrote down was panic attacks. Panic attacks was something that I definitely experienced before. I don't have panic attacks anymore, luckily, but I did have quite a few panic attacks, especially related to the sexual assault and the drowning. So that was two main like forms of my panic attacks, I suppose. And to go along with this, I also had flashbacks with those panic attacks. And this was very, very heightened when I was admitted to one of my psych ward admissions. And there was actually times where staff witnessed panic attacks. So it wasn't just, something that I was making up or anything like that. They did experience, I did witness that. And from them witnessing that, I actually received a treatment, which I will get into in a bit in this video. So then I want to go on and talk about something that I do still experience, which is anxiety. And the anxiety that I have is mainly related to relationships and friendships, and the fear that I'm either doing something wrong or the fear that they're going to leave me at some point. I have had so many friends, like not necessarily relationships, because I've not got huge experience with relationships, but I'm just talking about relationships in general, whether that be a friendship, whether that be a platonic love, whether that be actual love, all of those like types, anything, anybody you could have a relationship with. I've had so many people who have just in the end left me. And this could be for a number of reasons. I have had people leave me because they've said I've been too intense. I've had people say that I've messaged them too much. I've had people say that I've not messaged them enough. And being an autistic, I've always found it difficult to know the fine line between what's too much, what's enough, and what's too little. That's kind of been the thing that I've always struggled with. So I've got anxiety over relationships and friendships. I almost toy between the idea of wanting to go into a new friendship or wanting a new relationship because I crave that love and I crave that friendship or that relationship or whatever it be, but also with the fear of if I put all of my energy into that, because I do love very, very hard. And that's one of my almost downfalls as an autistic is like once I become invested in somebody, I become very invested in that person, like constantly thinking about them, constantly worrying about them. And I may not show this necessarily to that person, but when I love you very hard and I love you intensely. And it may not be something that as I said, I don't necessarily show, but I show it through more subtle things, through ways of, what's it called? The ways that you show love, the ways that you receive love. I will buy something in a shop or buy something online because I think that person will love that. And it doesn't necessarily need to be for a birthday or anything like that. Sometimes it will be, but sometimes it's just because I want to show that I love them. I will buy them something and be like, it might even be something as simple as like a hair clip, or it may be something as simple as, I don't know, a bag or like a t-shirt or something like that. And the t-shirts and the bags and slightly bigger items I'll keep for like birthdays and Christmas, but little tiny things, like it might just be like an eyeshadow palette that's like a couple of quid on Shein or something. And I go, oh, that friend will absolutely love that particular palette or that particular shade of colours or something like that. And I'll get it because I'm just like constantly thinking about that person. And it can be multiple people or it can just be like the one person. But yeah, it's very difficult then when that friendship ends or when that relationship ends, because I then struggle with I've put so much effort into this friendship, and it's not like it's, and I don't say that in a like selfish way. I say that in a, I've put so much love and like joy into this friendship or into this relationship, and then they end it or it ends naturally or however it ends, and I go, well, that was a waste. Like I almost flip and I just go to the, well, that was a waste. That was a waste of my time. Like, why did I even bother? And I struggle to see the, but that person gave me some really, really good times. And that person gave me some really, really good things. Or I struggle to see that side of things. I just go into like a depression of an anxiety of, well, if I ever get into another friendship then it's going to fail, or I even worry about the current other friends that I have. If it's a friendship, for example, I worry about the current other friends I have and the fact that they're going to leave me, or the fact that they're going to end up like not wanting to be my friend anymore for whatever reason. And it is very hard because it takes a very strong friend, like a secondary friend. So if something's happened and one of my friends has broken up with me, or like I said that you don't want to like, you know, continue a friendship or something, it is very hard for me then to not sort of bounce the feelings that I have onto another friend. And it takes a very strong like other friend that is separate from the one that's broken up to be like, I know that you're feeling rubbish right now, and I know that these feelings are based not on me and they're based on this other person, or they're based on this other scenario. And it takes a very strong person to be like, I'm going to be here for you, irregardless. And I've only had one time where that's happened. One time where somebody has gone, I know that the feelings that you're experiencing right now aren't about me, even though they seem like they're about me. But anyway, let's move on. So the next two are kind of like simultaneous. So poor mental health, mood swings, self-harm, suicidal thoughts and attempts, low confidence, low self-esteem. That's kind of like a chunk of ones that are kind of all interlinked as poor mental health. So for me, as I said, poor mental health was mood swings, it was self-harm, it was suicidal thoughts, attempts, it was low confidence, it was low self-esteem. And I say it was, but I'm going to now say the ones I still struggle with. So I still struggle with mood swings, not necessarily as intensely as what I did when I was younger, but I still struggle with them. And I still struggle with a lot of low confidence, a lot of low self esteem, especially relating to me as a person, my talents, my like even down to like YouTube sometimes. Like as much as I really, really want YouTube to work, I struggle to like imagine it working, if that makes sense. Like for those of you who may be struggling as a YouTuber or maybe struggling to become a YouTuber, you'll understand this. But I struggle to imagine it happening even though I want it to, simply because like it's like, well, I'm not good enough to do that. Like even if part of me thinks I am, the majority will be like, well, I'm not good enough to become a YouTuber, or I don't have enough to say to become a motivational speaker, because that's actually one of my dreams, is to do motivational speaking. So it's one of those. It's almost like a fight and a conflict in my brain. So then I'm going to move on to the next one, which is a poor relationship with food. I've always had a poor relationship with food. When I was younger, I had an eating disorder and I had various different types of eating disorders. Now I'm starting to rebuild my relationship with food, and it is very, very difficult. But I will have a series coming out very, very soon, and I'm going to tell you what it is because there's no point hiding it. I recently had bariatric surgery, and I'm going to be going ahead and doing a whole series of like my bariatric surgery, like how I got it and all that sort of stuff. I'm going to go through a whole different series, and there's a few different Q&As that I'm going to be doing throughout like my journey. So I've done one that was like a couple of weeks post-op. I'm going to be filming one today, which is 4 months post-op. So I'm going to be filming a load of different types of ones. I'm going to try and do 4 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, and just kind of then after 12 months, I'm going to try and post the whole series, because I understand that like people are going to want to hear the whole lot. So you're not going to see it until that September this year, because that's going to be around 12 months. But I am filming them, so just know that is coming. So the next thing that I do still struggle with, and I've always struggled with, is a lack of independence. And this manifests itself with motivation as well, which I didn't put down, but it is definitely something that I struggle with. So I struggle with a lack of independence, and this can come and fluctuate in sort of in like a roller coaster in a way. Some days I struggle with everything, like even getting out of bed. And some days I am okay. And, you know, I'm more independent now than I was like even a couple of years ago. Even down to, I'll give you an example. So I work at a school, and a couple of years ago, I was really like not tardy, but I was late to a few things. I struggled with timekeeping, like all that sort of stuff. And now I've really, really got better at that. But I would put that under the lack of independence, because I was struggling with, like I said, timekeeping. I was struggling with like a routine. I was struggling with anything. I don't really have a proper routine still, but I, was struggling a lot with it. So the next one is nightmares. Nightmares is luckily, touch the wood, is luckily something that I have not experienced in quite a number of years, but it was something that I did have at the very start of my CPTSD journey. Memory lapses and hypervigilance, the last two that I want to talk about. So memory lapses for me is split into two different categories, because memory lapses is, I do have some memory lapses relating to the actual traumas, and I also have memory lapses in just my daily life. So like forgetfulness, basically, it is what it's down to, and I do have a lot of that. I do struggle with forgetfulness. Like, if I don't write something down, like, this is why I have notes for videos. Like, there's very few videos that I don't have notes for, and when I say I have notes for videos, it's notes, it's bullet points. I do elaborate on this because I feel that if I don't elaborate on things, then I will like lose personality when it comes to the actual video. So that is why I put bullet points, like literally for my symptoms. It's just a list of symptoms. There's no extra bits there because I wanted to be able to elaborate. I wanted to feel like I could elaborate with it. So memory lapses, as I said, in relation to the actual traumas, there's certain parts of my sexual assault that I cannot remember, and I cannot remember the full details of it, luckily. And I think part of that is some of the therapies that I've had, which I'm going to get into literally in a few minutes or a few seconds even. Hypervigilance is something that I kind of still struggle with, but not to the extent that I did struggle with it like at the very start of my traumas and stuff. When I was first coming out of being sexually assaulted, it was to the point where if I saw somebody that looked similar to my abuser, I would be scared, I'd walk away from that person, I'd cross the road. Like, even though my logical brain could tell that it was not that person, they looked similar. So because they looked similar, automatically in my head, they were dangerous. And so I would walk away from that person. I wouldn't stand anywhere near them. I wouldn't sit next to them on a bus. I'd stand up on a bus. If it was someone that had a free seat next to them that looked like my abuser. There was one time that I was in hospital and one of the other patients looked like my abuser, and they came and they did an action that was basically what my abuser used to do. So I jumped up and I had a panic attack after that. And none of the nurses necessarily knew why, but it was because this particular person had the same sort of build and the same sort of age range as my abuser, and then he kind of put his arm up and he put it along the back of the sofa, which is what my abuser used to do all the time. Like, he used to rest his arm on the back of the sofa, and so when he did that, like, he was sitting next to me, and that was like already having like almost like a silent panic attack because he came and sat next to me. But as soon as he put his arm up and around me, that was it. Nah, couldn't do it. Like, literally could not do it. So I literally jumped up, and all the staff that were sitting there in the community area were like, "What the freaky happened? Like, what just happened?" And none of them asked me, which I think they should have. But at the time, I just kind of took myself up to my room and had a bit of a panic attack. Um, and none of them thought to even go and check on me, which was one of the things I want to get into as well, because yeah, there was definitely a lot of things that I feel could have been better about my psych ward experiences. And yeah, there's lots of things. But anyway, let's get into the treatments that I have received for my CPTSD, even before I was diagnosed with CPTSD in 2021. So the first ever thing I had was counselling. I did not get on with counselling. I felt like it was a waste of my time because the particular counsellor I had was somebody who literally sat in the other corner of the room and just went, "Yes, I understand. Yes, I understand what you mean. Yes, I get it. Yes, da 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 da," and wouldn't offer any sort of support. And I was looking for something that was more supportive. Anyway, so moving on, I did CBT and then I did DBT. I definitely found that DBT was a lot better for me. CBT I felt was a waste of time. DBT was definitely a bit better. So for those of you who don't know, CBT is cognitive behavioural therapy. I will leave like a little information about it on screen. And DBT is dialectical behavioural therapy. They are slightly different in the way they work. Actually, I think they are quite different, to be fair, but I'll leave two different definitions so you can read it if you would like to. The next thing I had was EMDR. So this one stands for Eye Movement Sensitization Reprocessing Therapy. I will leave a bit of a screenshot as well about this, but this therapy is the therapy that changed my life and was the main therapy that made me who I am today. So, EMDR, for me, I'm going to talk about it briefly. I do have a video on it, so I will link that in the description box down below as well, so you can watch that after this one. But EMDR for me was holding two different buzzers, like vibrating buzzers in my hands, like one in my right and one in my left, and they would alternately buzz. So it would go left, right, left, right, left, right, and I could alternate the speed, I could alternate like how quickly they were, the intensity of the buzzes, all that sort of stuff. And this was done in a controlled environment, and it was done whilst I was being told to think about my traumas. And it's weird how it works, but basically it makes your eyes move. It makes your eyes move side to side, and you cannot control this. And by doing that, it helps to reprocess the traumas and to file them correctly in your brain. That was the way that my therapist explained it to me. And as I said, this therapy changed my life. Changed my life. Made it so I could function. And I only had like 5 or 6 sessions. Some people need more. I only had 5 or 6 sessions. And I felt like a different person. Honestly. And I can't explain how it happened. Well, I can. EMDR. But then the last different type of therapy I had was psychodynamic therapy. This was something I had fairly recently, and it was during COVID, so it was on Zoom. But psychodynamic therapy for me was a case of bringing something that I was struggling with to the session, talking about it, and then receiving feedback from my counselor or from my therapist. This therapist also changed my life for the better. Changed my life, made me look at things in different perspectives, and helped me to look at things in a more rounded scenario. So there was one main reason for me getting referred for this therapy, and I don't really want to get into that, but there was one main reason, but it ended up being about everything. And this particular therapist, she was amazing, to the point that I wrote her a really long-winded thank you card and sent it to the mental health team for her to have. And I actually said to her on the last session, I said, "Can I write you a thank you card?" And she said, "Of course you can." Like, obviously I didn't put anything in it, but like I put like all the words in it and stuff. I didn't put anything extra because they can't receive gifts. But I was like, I don't even know whether I can send her a thank you card. So I asked her on the last session, I said, "Can I send you a thank you card?" And she said, "Of course you can." And so I wrote it all out and I sent it to the CMHT, which is the community mental health team, like headquarters where she works. And I'd never received any feedback for it because I don't think she can contact me after the therapy, but I hope she liked it. So if you're watching this video, I doubt you are, but if you're watching this video, then you changed my life and you made it so much better. Like, I can't even explain it. Now I want to just finish this video off. I don't even know how long I've been recording because I've turned my screen the other way, so I purposely am forced to look at the lens because I struggle to look at the lens when it comes to seeing myself in the screen. So I hope this is not too long, but I have a funny feeling it's like half an hour of unedited. So yeah, I'm going to end this video with talking about how my life looks now. My life is so much different from that 17, 18-year-old person who was traumatized, who was struggling, who didn't know whether they were going to be here in a year's time, let alone 5 years' time. I'm sorry for that little girl who lost her childhood to bullies. I'm sorry for that little girl who her innocence was taken way too young at 17 and 18 by a sexual abuser. I'm sorry that 14-year-old girl had to go through nearly dying at the hands of a bully. And I'm sorry that me as that child had to go through that. I didn't ask to be traumatized. It has made me stronger, but I didn't ask to have that happen to me. So I want to end this video by saying that if you've experienced anything similar to me, any sort of trauma that has left you with a PTSD diagnosis, a CPTSD diagnosis, if it is something that you think you have CPTSD or PTSD and you are struggling, I want you to know that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I want you to know that even if you have nobody else that believes in you, I believe in you. I believe that you can get through this. And I believe that there is hope for everyone. And I know that's hard because when you're struggling with PTSD symptoms, it is so hard to believe that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. But take it from me, there is a light. There is a light, and for some people that tunnel is longer than others, and for some people that light is duller than others. But I believe in you, even if nobody else does. And I'm going to end that video here because I believe that people always have a purpose in life. Whether that be to become a teacher and to stop other kids from being bullied, or whether that be to even like anything you want to be. You can be anything you want to be. But I'm going to say it again. I believe in you, even if nobody else does. And I shall see you in my next one. Bye, guys.
Just like you're young again. No, don't you cry. Just get back up again.